Here's a little experiment. Hold your breath. Hold it some more. Keep holding it until your face turns red. You start to feel a weird mixture of stress, fear, anxiety, and temptation. Stress, fear, anxiety at not having any oxygen, and temptation about how good it's going to feel when you finally go. So you have desires, two strong desires at play here that aren't necessarily competing with each other. They run concurrently, right? You have a desire to cease a negative experience, and you have a desire to experience a positive experience. Or at least in relative terms, these are negative and positive experiences. The negative part is mitigated or dampened by the fact that you're kind of aware that you're doing it on purpose. You can breathe whenever you want, so it's not really that scary. The positive is dampened by the fact that you're only reacting. You're going increasingly into the negative when you hold your breath, and you know that the sudden ascent in terms of your overall sense of well-being only kind of relatively feels positive, but it's still a temptation, right? Depending on where you draw the line. If I'm in a deficit and I go up, it's actually a positive, at least relative to where I was. So I'm holding my breath. I feel negative stress. I feel fear, anxiety, discomfort as my body, tenses up, and my body seems in some strange way to physically crave something in a way that doesn't really have anything to do with physical pain, because I'm not really in pain when I'm holding my breath, but it's a profoundly undesirable state. We have two motivators in front of us in that circumstance. We have desire and we have aversion. We have that which we want and that which we do not want, all militating towards starting to breathe again. But there's something else in the mix there as well. What is it that has put us in that situation in the first place? What is it that has gotten us in a situation where our face is red and we go, oh, won't it feel good to get a massive lungful of air? But right now it feels really stressful to have my heart racing like that and my body sort of expecting something to happen, and I don't really know what's going on, but in some sense I'm being sort of forced, or something is trying to get me to do something. But something else is resisting that. What is that? I would call that your will. Now you can say that it's an illusion of a will, sure, but it does seem as though something has intervened to create a situation in which the outside world, i.e. physicality, my body being in a sense the outside world here in terms of my will, acting upon my will to struggle with it. So you've created, as any kid knows when you sort of have a breath-holding competition, you've created something of a traffic jam, a very stressful traffic jam. You've deliberately clogged up the works. Something has intervened to deliberately create a situation that cannot last. In a sense, the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, but as we find out, it's not really unstoppable. But what is the force that's meeting the immovable object? It's the will, I would presume. But the will is engaged to do something that these two other forces, other desires, are trying to subvert. My will to not breathe is being subverted by my fear of not breathing, or the effects of not breathing, and my desire to breathe. My desire to breathe. There is a struggle taking place there. You can explain that, but what I'm trying to get at here is what is happening in real time in the moment when that is taking place. Something is preventing my body from doing what, to all appearances, my body wants to do. What is going on there? That strikes me as a clear illustration of a will. I'm trying not to do something, whatever I is. Something has intervened, or at least thinks that it's intervened, to not do something, to not breathe. I'm deliberately holding my breath. There are two other forces, desire and aversion, working upon me to attempt to get me to breathe. And yet my will at the present moment is, in the moment when I'm still holding my breath, is holding these two motivators, desire and aversion, off. What is taking place there? I specifically put this question to people who identify themselves as hard determinists because I'm trying to sort of get at how you would arrive at a position of hard determinism, given that there are these sort of weird situations in which necessity and will seem to collide like this. What is taking place here, and how would you explain the scenario that I have described in hard deterministic terms? I don't see how you can resolve that without bringing the will into it. In this case, either the will to life, in other words, I'm somehow being externally motivated to do something that has the ultimate aim of naked survival, or there is the will to power. I want to control my body in the same way as these yogis, if you believe the fairy tales, manage to control their breathing for hours, days, whatever. What is taking place in that context? And specifically, I'm interested in how that plays out in terms of someone who has adopted a hard deterministic position. I find hard determinism difficult to justify in terms of a rational assessment of the evidence. And it strikes me as almost the same thing as a belief in free will. How do you arrive at a position of hard determinism without bringing belief into it? Without somewhere along the way saying, because it resonates with me. In other words, what are the steps by which one could rationally arrive at a hard deterministic position and meet the objections to it?